Well, while I'm not a particularly religious person, I do believe that the teachings of Jesus are good. I mean, let's just say, I agree with the principles that Jesus advocated.
When Elon Musk weighed in on the controversial portrayal of Jesus during the Paris Olympics, the world took notice. His reaction reignited long-standing debates about the depiction of Jesus, a figure whose image has been shaped and reshaped over centuries, often distorting its historical authenticity. This is not a recent problem even. Going back in history, even iconic works like Warner Sallman's painting don't paint an accurate picture. So, what did the real Jesus look like? Well, hold on to your seats because we're about to show you how Elon Musk revealed the first ever real image of Jesus Christ. Let's get started with a history lesson. The puzzle of Christ's image. The image of Jesus Christ has long been a subject of intrigue, debate, and reinterpretation, with discussions about his physical appearance spanning centuries. Historically, these debates have not been confined to theological circles, but have reached into the realms of art, culture, and even modern media. The puzzle of Christ's image reflects humanity's collective struggle to reconcile historical evidence, spiritual beliefs, and cultural influences. Elon Musk's recent comments about Jesus' depiction during the Paris Olympics have added another layer to this conversation. So, where does the image of Jesus come from? Well, much of the popularized image of Jesus can be traced to the work of Warner Sallman, a 20th century American artist whose vision has become one of the most enduring and reproduced representations of Christ. Born in 1892 in Chicago, Sallman was raised in a devoutly Christian household and initially pursued a career in commercial art. His religious upbringing, combined with his artistic skills, eventually set the stage for his iconic work. Sallman was known for his ability to create images that resonated deeply with audiences, offering a sense of comfort and familiarity that transcended the canvas. His most iconic work, The Head of Christ, is steeped in a mix of faith, desperation, and inspiration. It's actually an interesting story. In the early 1920s, Sallman, then a struggling artist, found himself at a crossroads in his career and faith. During a moment of intense prayer, he claimed to have envisioned the image of Jesus as a source of reassurance and guidance. This vision became the foundation for the painting he completed in 1940, which depicts Christ with soft, glowing hair, a serene expression, and a peaceful demeanor. The painting's hallmark is its ability to evoke feelings of intimacy and divine closeness, which Sallman believed was essential for fostering a personal connection between Christ and the viewer. However, the artistic intent behind Sallman's painting was never historical accuracy. Instead, his goal was to create an approachable, universally comforting image of Jesus that aligned with the emotional and spiritual needs of 20th century Christians. The warm light that bathes Christ's face, the tender gaze, and the gentle composition reflect this intent. Yet, these features also highlight the painting's departure from historical and cultural truths about Jesus' appearance. Scholars argue that Jesus, a Jewish man born in 1st century Palestine, would have had a complexion, hair texture, and facial features consistent with the region's Semitic population, vastly different from the light-skinned, Europeanized figure Sallman presented. Moreover, the Gospels, while central to Christian theology, provide no description of Jesus' physical traits, leaving his image to be interpreted and reinterpreted by generations of artists, theologians, and believers. This lack of concrete details, combined with the socio-political and religious dynamics of the Middle East during the 1st century AD, has led to depictions of Jesus that often reflect the biases, ideals, and artistic conventions of the cultures producing them, rather than historical reality. Things are not helped by the fact that in the era when Jesus lived, the Middle East was a melting pot of ethnicities shaped by trade routes, Roman occupation, and diverse religious traditions. As a Jewish man born in Bethlehem and raised in Nazareth, Jesus would likely have had the physical characteristics typical of Semitic populations of the time. Scholars suggest that he would have had darker skin, coarse, dark hair, and a stout, muscular build shaped by a labor-intensive lifestyle as a carpenter. This image contrasts sharply with the light-skinned, soft-featured figure seen in Warner Sallman's The Head of Christ. Sallman's painting, created in 1940, reflects not the historical realities of Jesus' environment, but rather the cultural ideals and artistic preferences of mid-20th century America. The image's soft, glowing hair, fair complexion, and serene expression evoke a westernized interpretation of beauty and spirituality, far removed from the realities of first-century Palestine. So why is the image so ubiquitous? Well, the rapid dissemination of Sallman's The Head of Christ was made possible by advancements in printing and mass communication technology. The painting was reproduced on a staggering scale, appearing on church bulletins, prayer cards, calendars, and even stained glass windows. By mid-century, it had become one of the most recognizable religious images in the world, used in churches, schools, and personal devotion. Its accessibility and widespread use during significant global crises, such as the Second World War and the Great Depression, contributed to its emotional resonance. For many, the painting's calm, approachable depiction of Jesus provided solace during periods of uncertainty and hardship. Moreover, many churches integrated the image into worship settings, using it as a focal point in sanctuaries or as an educational tool in Sunday school curricula. Generations of Christians grew up with Sallman's Jesus as their mental image of Christ. Over time, this widespread acceptance blurred the line between artistic interpretation and historical authenticity. But there's another influence on how we look at Christ. Directed by Mel Gibson, the 2004 film The Passion of the Christ presented a raw, unflinching depiction of the final hours of Jesus' life, and Jim Caviezel's emotionally charged performance became the heart of this cinematic masterpiece. The film's brutal yet reverent depiction of the Passion story struck a chord with believers, igniting conversations about faith, forgiveness, and redemption. Many reported feeling as though they were witnessing the suffering of Christ firsthand, an emotional journey that deepened their spiritual connection. Caviezel's expressions of agony, love, and resilience mirrored the theological understanding of Jesus' humanity and divinity, making his image a powerful focal point for devotion. For some, the experience of watching the film was so profound that Caviezel's face became synonymous with their mental image of Christ. Caviezel's image also began to find its way into religious spaces. Stills and promotional images from the film were adopted by some churches, temples, and homes, where they were displayed alongside or in place of more traditional depictions of Jesus. These images, often showing Caviezel in moments of anguish or quiet strength, became visual reminders of the Passion. However, there's a common problem with Sallman's and Caviezel's portrayals. They have conveyed a white image of Jesus. This, of course, is far from accurate. So how can we get closer to visualizing Jesus as he was in reality? Well, there are lessons to be learned through history. Reimagining Jesus through historical evidence. If we brush through historical evidence, the image of Jesus becomes less and less Western. His true physical characteristics aligned with his Middle Eastern heritage. As a Jewish man born in first-century Palestine, Jesus likely had dark skin, coarse, curly hair, and a stature and build typical of the region. Scholars suggest he may have been around 5 feet 5 inches tall, reflecting the average height of men of his time, with features that bore the mark of his Semitic ancestry. These attributes sharply contrast the light-skinned, soft-featured portrayals that dominate Western art and media, where Jesus is often imagined with flowing, golden-brown hair, pale skin, and blue or hazel eyes. Western art has long prioritized depictions of Jesus that align with the cultural and aesthetic ideals of European societies. These images, from Michelangelo's frescoes to Warner Sallman's iconic Head of Christ, have created a homogenized representation of Jesus that reflects not only the artistry of their creators, but also the societal biases and assumptions of their eras. This portrayal often emphasizes ethereal beauty and divine majesty over historical realism, making Jesus more relatable to Western audiences, but distancing him from his true cultural and ethnic roots. Visualizing Christ as a fair-skinned figure has inadvertently shaped collective imaginations and reinforced a Eurocentric lens through which faith is understood. Understanding Jesus' true identity, including his likely appearance, holds deep significance in fostering an authentic connection with faith. By embracing the historical Jesus, a man shaped by the cultural, social, and physical realities of first-century Judea, believers can deepen their spiritual relationship with Christ as a tangible, relatable figure who lived and walked among the marginalized. Shifting away from idealized images encourages believers to reflect on the essence of Christ's teachings rather than the superficialities of his appearance. For marginalized groups, particularly those who do not identify with Western ideals, this reimagining offers an opportunity to see Jesus as someone who shares their cultural and ethnic identity, reinforcing the inclusivity of his message. But before we answer this question, we need to contend with one more, one that greatly challenged believers and scholars for centuries. Did Jesus even exist? In the early stages of historical inquiry, some scholars and skeptics questioned whether Jesus was a real person. These debates often stemmed from the lack of direct archaeological evidence and the fact that the primary sources about Jesus, such as the Gospels, are religious texts, not strictly historical documents. Some critics argued that Jesus might be a myth, a composite of various religious traditions, or even a fictional character created by early Christians to serve as a theological archetype. This skepticism grew, especially during the 18th and 19th centuries, when the rise of rationalism and scientific thinking led some scholars to question the supernatural claims made in religious texts. However, over time, the weight of historical and textual evidence has overwhelmingly supported the view that Jesus of Nazareth was indeed a historical figure. The academic consensus is now that Jesus was a Jewish preacher who lived in Roman-occupied Judea in the 1st century AD. Moreover, historians have pointed out that the Gospels, while religious documents, are not the only sources of information about Jesus. Other early writings, such as the works of Roman historians like Tacitus and Jewish historians like Flavius Josephus, make reference to Jesus. Tacitus, in his Annals, written around 116 AD, refers to Jesus' execution under Pontius Pilate, and Josephus, in his Antiquities of the Jews, written somewhere between 93 and 94 AD, makes mention of Jesus as a wise man and a teacher who was crucified under Pilate. Letters and writings from early Christians, such as those of the Apostle Paul, provide an early record of Jesus' existence and the impact of his teachings. These writings were composed within a few decades of Jesus' death, reinforcing the idea that he was a historical figure. Jesus also fits within the context of other figures in ancient Judea. During this time, the region was rife with religious movements, many of which focused on messianic or apocalyptic themes. Jesus' message, which emphasized love, forgiveness, and the coming kingdom of God, aligned with various Jewish traditions and expectations. Scholars use a variety of historical methods, such as textual criticism and contextual analysis, to evaluate the reliability of ancient sources. These methods have consistently supported the conclusion that Jesus was a real person, though the details of his life and teachings are subject to interpretation. However, the specifics of Jesus' life and the theological implications of his actions are contentious and debated. What we do know for sure, from historical evidence alone, is that Jesus of Nazareth was born to Mary and Joseph in the town of Bethlehem. He was raised in Nazareth in the region of Galilee, where he worked as a carpenter before beginning his public ministry around the age of 30. His teachings focused on the love of God, love for one's neighbor, forgiveness, and the coming of the kingdom of God. Jesus preached to a diverse audience, drawing large crowds with his message of hope and his miraculous acts of healing, including restoring sight to the blind, curing lepers, and raising the dead. He was known for his radical challenge to the existing religious and social order. He critiqued the religious elite, particularly the Pharisees and Sadducees, for their hypocrisy and legalism, and he associated with sinners, outcasts, and the marginalized. His actions and teachings, particularly his claim to be the Son of God, led to growing tension with the Jewish authorities. They saw him as a threat to their power and influence. However, the first blow came not from his enemies, but from a friend, one of his apostles, Judas Iscariot, who betrayed him. He was condemned to crucifixion, a punishment reserved for the most heinous criminals. He was arrested by the Jewish authorities, tried before the Sanhedrin or the Jewish council, and ultimately brought before the Roman governor Pontius Pilate for trial. Pilate, though finding no fault in Jesus, sentenced him to death by crucifixion, largely to appease the crowd and maintain order. Jesus' death on the cross is viewed by Christians as a sacrificial act for the salvation of humanity. His resurrection, according to Christian belief, occurred 3 days later, confirming his divinity and role as the Messiah. According to the Gospels, Pontius Pilate, the Roman governor who sentenced Jesus to death, was reluctant to do so, sensing that he was innocent of the charges brought against him. In some Gospel accounts, Pilate's wife even sent him a message warning him to have nothing to do with Jesus, as she had suffered a troubling dream about him. Despite this, Pilate was more concerned with maintaining peace in Judea than with justice. Faced with pressure from the Jewish leaders and the crowd calling for Jesus' crucifixion, Pilate ultimately washed his hands of the decision, symbolically declaring that he was not responsible for Jesus' death. Pilate is often viewed as a figure who tried to act in a fair and just manner, but was ultimately swayed by political considerations and the threat of unrest. The historian Josephus also references Pilate and his role in Jesus' crucifixion, reinforcing the historical basis of the event. Other figures who interacted with Jesus, such as the Apostle Peter, Mary Magdalene, and the Apostle John, offer unique insights into their experiences with him. Peter, one of Jesus' closest followers, famously denied Jesus 3 times before his crucifixion, a moment that deeply troubled him and later led to his repentance. Mary Magdalene, often depicted as the first to encounter the risen Christ, became a central figure in early Christianity, with her witness of Jesus' resurrection offering profound theological significance. The Roman centurion at the foot of the cross, who declared, "Truly this man was the Son of God," is another figure who reflects on Jesus' identity in the face of his death. This is seen as a recognition of Jesus' divine nature, which, according to Christian belief, was fully revealed at the moment of his crucifixion. Similarly, the soldiers who mocked Jesus during his trial and crucifixion saw in him something extraordinary, even as they participated in his humiliation. The historical existence of Jesus is no longer widely questioned by scholars. So, what do we know about the physical appearance of Jesus? Well, this information comes from the letter of Lentulus, attributed to Publius Lentulus, who is described as a governor or official in Judea during the 1st century. The letter, written by a contemporary to Jesus, describes him in an almost ethereal manner, emphasizing his calmness, wisdom, and unique presence. Lentulus, believed to have been in a position of authority, presents Jesus as a man of profound dignity and reverence. He describes Jesus as having a reverend countenance, with hair the color of an unripe hazelnut, which is light brown or a dull golden color. His hair is parted in the middle, and his beard is noted as being relatively thin, resembling the appearance of a Nazarite, an ascetic who refrained from certain pleasures and personal grooming as part of their religious vows. The eyes of Jesus, according to this account, were bright and clear, signifying not just physical clarity, but an inner radiance that embodied compassion and wisdom. His presence is said to have been commanding yet gentle, with an aura of majesty and virtue that exuded peace and calmness. This depiction, like so many other descriptions throughout history, emphasizes qualities of inner strength and kindness, often over and above the details of his physical features. But who was Publius Lentulus? This appears to be a pen name for Pontius Pilate, or at least a senior official in Judea during Pilate's time, which could add weight to the idea that the letter's description stemmed from someone in close proximity to Jesus. But it would be unwise to stop just here. Have you ever wondered why every culture has a relatable image of Jesus? Well, there's a reason for that too. Jesus as a universal Messiah. In Western art, Jesus is frequently portrayed as a man with fair skin, often depicted with light brown or blonde hair, and gentle, delicate features. These depictions reflect the European ideals of beauty and purity that were prevalent during the Renaissance and in later Christian art. This particular portrayal, seen in works by artists like Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo, became so ingrained in Western consciousness that it has shaped how many people across the world perceive Jesus. However, in cultures outside of Europe, the image of Jesus adapts to reflect local identities and values. In Ethiopian Christian art, for instance, Jesus is depicted with dark skin, and his features are often stylized to reflect African physical traits. This portrayal connects Jesus with the African experience, offering a representation that resonates with those who may feel distanced from the Eurocentric depiction of Christ. Similarly, in many Latin American depictions, Jesus is portrayed with indigenous or mestizo features. Similarly, in Asia, Jesus often takes on East Asian features. Every culture envisions Jesus in its own image, as a way to reflect the values and aspirations of the people who worship him. Despite the varied portrayals of his physical appearance, what makes Jesus remarkable is not his outward form, but the universal nature of his message. His teachings have always centered on compassion, justice, and love, principles that resonate deeply across different times and places. He reached out to the marginalized, healed the sick, and preached about the boundless love of God, challenging people to live with humility, kindness, and forgiveness. His command to love thy neighbor as thyself and the revolutionary idea of turning the other cheek have become core principles in various moral teachings around the world. This ethical dimension of Jesus' character transcends the confines of physical appearance. But before we give up hope about figuring out his physical altogether, let's take one more piece of historical evidence into account: the Shroud of Turin. Back in the 14th century, the Shroud of Turin entered historical records when it was displayed in a small church in Lille, France, by a knight named Geoffroy de Charny. It is believed that it had been safeguarded by early Christian communities, passed through Byzantine hands, or even brought to Europe during the Crusades. Some accounts suggest it was once housed in Constantinople and may have been looted during the Fourth Crusade in 1204. In any case, the shroud's faint, ghostly image of a man bearing wounds consistent with crucifixion, most notably bloodstains around the wrists, feet, and head, has inspired awe and curiosity for centuries. The figure is portrayed in striking detail, showing evidence of scourging, a crown of thorns, and a spear wound in the side. What makes the image remarkable is its negative quality. When photographed for the first time in 1898 by Secondo Pia, the photographic negative revealed a highly detailed and lifelike image. This ignited a wave of scientific and theological interest, as the question of how the image was formed remains unanswered to this day. In the centuries following its appearance in Lille, the shroud passed through various hands. It was eventually entrusted to the House of Savoy in 1453 and kept in Chambéry, where it narrowly survived a fire in 1532. The incident left burn marks and water stains on the cloth, but the image itself remained intact. In 1578, the shroud was moved to Turin, Italy, where it has been kept ever since. Thus the name, the Shroud of Turin. Believers argue that it is the authentic burial cloth of Jesus Christ, pointing to its anatomical accuracy and the alignment of its wounds with biblical accounts of the crucifixion. The precision of the bloodstains and the lack of any artistic medium on the cloth have led some scientists, such as members of the Shroud of Turin research project, to conclude that the image was not created by conventional means. Theories range from the image being a result of a miraculous event, such as Christ's resurrection, to natural processes involving radiation or chemical reactions. Skeptics, however, question the shroud's authenticity and also point to the lack of concrete historical evidence linking the shroud to the early centuries of Christianity. However, defenders of the shroud argue that it is a true relic. In fact, it is much more than just a relic. It is a tangible connection to the suffering and sacrifice of Jesus Christ. But let's not get distracted. What does the shroud tell us about the image of Jesus Christ? Well, the figure on the shroud is depicted in remarkable detail, showcasing the front and back of a crucified man. His body bears wounds consistent with crucifixion, including marks on the wrists and feet, a pierced side, and a head injury consistent with a crown of thorns. The man on the shroud is tall and lean, with a well-proportioned build, indicative of physical strength, perhaps reflecting the labor-intensive lifestyle of a carpenter in first-century Judea. His hair is long, parted in the middle, and falls gracefully to his shoulders, while his beard is full yet neatly defined. This description resonates strikingly with accounts such as the Letter of Lentulus, which described Jesus as having hair the color of an unripe hazelnut, parted in the middle, and a beard that was not thick, but somewhat like that of a Nazarite. The shroud's depiction of a serene and dignified countenance further aligns with Lentulus' characterization of Jesus as having a reverend countenance that exuded calmness and majesty. Experts who have studied the shroud have noted its consistency with traditional depictions of Jesus and descriptions passed down through history. Dr. John Jackson, a physicist who led the Shroud of Turin research project, highlighted the anatomical precision of the image and its alignment with the historical realities of crucifixion. Similarly, art historian Thomas de Wesselo argues that the shroud influenced medieval and Renaissance depictions of Christ, establishing a template for how Jesus was imagined in Western art. But does any of this even matter in the end? Musk's views on the image of Jesus, the universal Messiah. It all started with the opening ceremony of the 2024 Paris Olympics. A significant controversy erupted due to a performance that many perceived as a parody of Leonardo da Vinci's The Last Supper. In this segment, drag performers, a transgender model, and singer, Philippe Catherine, portraying Dionysus, the Greek god of wine and festivity, were arranged in a tableau reminiscent of the iconic painting. This portrayal led to widespread criticism from various religious and conservative groups who viewed it as a mockery of Christian symbolism. The Vatican expressed its sadness over the performance, emphasizing that while freedom of expression is important, it should be exercised with respect for the faith. Elon Musk also voiced his concern on the matter and criticized this mockery of Christian icons. This may seem pretty normal at first, but it is only after one realizes that Musk is agnostic does one grasp the significance of his condemnation. But Musk has also described himself as a cultural Christian, meaning that he does, at the very least, hold Jesus in high regard. In several interviews, he has mentioned his admiration for principles such as kindness, empathy, and the pursuit of knowledge and truth. From this lens, Musk sees Jesus as a universal Messiah, not just in a religious sense, but also as a figure whose teachings emphasize the broader, timeless values of compassion, selflessness, and a higher purpose. Jesus' message of loving one's neighbor, helping the marginalized, and forgiving enemies might resonate with Musk's belief in the importance of human cooperation for the betterment of the world. Musk has often spoken about the need for collective action on issues like climate change and space exploration, and in this regard, Jesus' values of love and compassion for others align with the idea of working together for the common good. While he has been vocal about his skepticism of overly rigid institutions, including religious ones, his advocacy for truth and a search for deeper understanding could lead him to respect the values that Jesus espoused. Jesus' challenge to the status quo of his time, including the religious and political systems, might resonate with Musk, who has often positioned himself against entrenched societal systems, especially in business and technology. Musk's admiration for people who push boundaries, question authority, and strive for change could find parallels in the way Jesus confronted the religious leaders of his day. In the end, what difference does it make? The worldly appearance of Jesus is irrelevant when looking at him as a Messiah. The essence of his teachings and the transformative power of his message transcend the superficialities of skin color, facial features, or cultural heritage. Jesus did not call upon his followers to venerate his outward form. Instead, he urged them to focus on their inner transformation, to love one another, and to strive for a deeper connection with God. His life and ministry centered on principles of humility, compassion, and justice, values that resonate universally, regardless of the cultural or physical depiction of the man who inspired them. Throughout history, the world has embraced Jesus not for how he looked, but for what he represented: hope, love, and redemption. Artists and cultures have depicted him in their own image, not out of disrespect or an attempt to distort his essence, but as a way of bringing him closer to their hearts. Whether portrayed as a fair-skinned figure in Western art, a dark-skinned savior in African traditions, or with East Asian features in certain cultures, these images symbolize humanity's universal desire to connect with the divine. What matters most is not the accuracy of these representations, but the spiritual truth they convey, a truth that inspires people to seek higher ideals and live with purpose. The message of Jesus was never about physicality, but about spirit and action. He called upon his followers to love their neighbors, to forgive as they wish to be forgiven, and to uplift the downtrodden. In this way, Jesus serves as a mirror reflecting humanity's potential for goodness and unity. Focusing on his physical appearance detracts from the deeper meaning of his mission: to heal, to guide, and to make a more compassionate and just world. Well, that's it for now. Thanks for watching. Did you like this video? If you did, please consider liking, dropping a comment, and hitting the subscribe button so that you don't miss out on our new uploads. Also, don't miss this video you see on your screen right now. It's truly unbelievable.